Welcome, everyone, to the Movement Made Better podcast. Today's episode, we are super excited for our guest here. We've been really amped to have Chip Morton with us. And Chip, if you don't know who Chip is, I'll let Chip introduce himself and give you listeners out there in podcast land a little background on himself.
Well, I guess I'll start with I'm a husband and father of 7. So everybody, out there with their families right now, believe me, there are 4 out of the house right now, but the family part, starting with that tonight, because that family part right now really is at the forefront of everybody's mind. So I guess this will be fun to do this talk about, movement and my professional career. But I guess starting with who we are as men and women, as people, that's going to go through our whole, our conversations. That's going to be knit and thread throughout our entire talk. But that said, I've been coaching my professional life. I've been coaching for over 30 years, and started. I'll start with the coaching part. As a grad assistant at Ohio State, and at the same time, I was a strength coach for Franklin Heights High School on the west side of Columbus. So while I was doing my graduate work, my first coaching experience where I was being compensated for it with a master's degree and a stipend was with the Ohio State football program in 1985, but also at Franklin Heights High School. So I was learning. I was in the process of learning and doing at the same time. From there, I got my master's at Ohio State and then was hired at Penn State with men's football, with varsity football, and half of the other varsity sports for men and women, so 14 other sports. I was there for 4.5 years and then got into the NFL in 92 with the San Diego Chargers, and have spent the rest of my professional career in the NFL. So past 26 years with the Chargers. And then I was the first strength coach for the Carolina Panthers when they started the team in 95, which is going to date me. But then was with Baltimore on their first Super Bowl run with that great team. And hopefully we'll get to some of those stories. And then Washington for a year, and then Cincinnati Bengals for the last 16 years. So currently I'm between jobs. So I'm home, and now with what's going on in the world, I'm home. But, so in a nutshell, over 30 years of coaching experience with men and women, high school athletes, elderly. When I was in grad school, I worked in a fitness club, the old racquetball, Nautilus clubs,
Yep.
and trained, some 70-year-old clients. And so I guess I have a breadth of experience with all populations. So that's it in a nutshell.
Very nice. And you grew up in Connecticut.
I did. New Haven, the mean streets of New Haven. Actually, Hamden, if you want to get really technical, but people will recognize Hamden. I grew up on the edge of the New Haven edge of Hamden, near the Highwood section. So more of an urban melting pot upbringing. 10 minutes from Yale University. So grew up in it with city life as opposed to more of with a little suburban feel. So yeah.
Did you play a lot of sports growing up?
I did. Back then in our town in Hamden, you'll like this, Dennis, ice hockey the Northeast is huge. It's interesting because back there when I was growing up, and still all high schools had their own hockey rink. So the public schools all had their own rinks, and that was the major, and we had ours, and it benefited the town. So in our town, at a young age, I'm not sure if it's mites or midgets, whatever the name is now, but we started really, really young. And there was a love in my town, but unfortunately I was from we're middle class background, and it's really expensive. It's an expensive sport, even back then.
Oh yeah.
And so my folks, I know you want to play because everybody played in Hamden, but it was one of those economic decisions. So I took swimming lessons instead. Because swimming, the other thing is high schools have their own pools too. So it's amazing the infrastructure in the state of Connecticut. They had a really good educational system. I'm sure they still do, but a pool and a hockey rink, which also served the community. So I took lessons, and I had some aptitude, and I kept doing it. And I swam through high school, and in addition to playing the other sports, baseball and football in junior high school, and 1 year of basketball, you play the sports as they came in season. My folks signed me up, and my buddies played, and so I wasn't great in any of them. I guess swimming was the one that I was the most adept at, and continued in high school, and then walked on to North Carolina as a swimmer.
Oh.
Yeah, well,
right on.
You can say "ooh" to that. I was a division. I like to tell people I was a Division III swimmer who walked on into a Division I program. So I met a lot of great people and a lot of superior athletes. The Last Dance series on ESPN. I was a freshman the same year Michael Jordan was a freshman. Didn't know him, but that was the timeline. But I was around great people. And really, that was the impetus. That's where I discovered my profession. I walk on at Carolina, and they have a strength training program. Because before that, I was always on my own. I did it on my own. I enjoyed it, and that's a whole nother. We'll do that podcast sometime. But did it on my own up to that point. But I go to Carolina. Here I am, and they have me in a program. And at the time, it was traditional. Squat, bench, power clean, and some auxiliary stuff. That was what we were doing in the early 80s. And but here, my strength coach, we had some GAs. One was named Harley Dart, and then Chip Sigmund was another one who later worked in the NBA for a lot of years. He was a master's student, and also Mike Gentry, who is probably in the Strength Conditioning Hall of Fame somewhere. He was at Virginia Tech for all those years. Dr. Mike Gentry. He was also a GA. So I had some great men around me. And I'm thinking, wow, these guys get to hang out in the weight room, which I love. I love lifting weights. And they get to wear sweats to work every day and listen to music. This is a job. I mean, at the time, I was like, this is what I want to do. How do I do this? So I spent a lot of time with those guys and around those guys, and actually, I was better in training than I was in competing, and that became apparent really early. And the head swim coach at the time, Frank Comfort, after my freshman year, he basically took me aside. He said, "Chip, we love you. We want you to, we love you, but you can't swim anymore." You know what I mean?
We want you to train us now.
Yeah. We want you to. We think you can. You can help. We want you around the program, maybe in coaching of some sort. And so I needed Coach Comfort to put me out of my misery, so to speak. And it was time. But I got into the coaching side and just spent time in the weight room and just soaked all that in. And kind of got on my journey of, how do I pursue this? How does one become a strength coach? Because in the early 80s, they didn't have programs. Exercise physiology, as it was called at the time, was relatively new. And not all programs, not all schools had degree programs in that. I remember, looking at grad schools and just trying to find, where am I going to go to study this stuff? Most of it was in, cardiovascular fitness and cardiac training. That was the exercise. Carbohydrate metabolism it was mostly centered on that. Very little on strength training and strength development. And one of my buddies who I swam with, Randy Heyer, he lived in Ohio, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you come home with me and we'll visit Ohio State and see if I'm sure they have something. Let's go look there." So he lived in Columbus, and I went home with him, and literally knocked on doors. And for the young coaches, the people who want to get in the field, I wouldn't recommend doing what I did. We show up on a Friday, and I find out where's the grad school. where's the health and human development department? And on a Friday afternoon, I go knock on Dr. Charles Mann's door. No appointment. I didn't call ahead. Just I'm here. I didn't. Now I know better, but always call ahead. But and he was very gracious and directed me to Dr. David Lamb in the exercise physiology department over in Larkins Hall at the time, and also very sweet man. Just I walked in there and basically I said, I'm interested. He said, well, what do you want to study? And I didn't have any sophisticated answer. I just said, I enjoy the training process. I enjoy training athletes, and my passion is in, strength development, weight training. And they didn't really have a specialty in his department, but he said, hey, you ought to go talk to our strength coach, Steve Bliss, with the football program. And he's over across campus. So I thanked him for his time and for the direction, and went and saw Steve Bliss. And it turns out he had a really, really innovative program. And this is 1984. And he was part of the Nebraska Husker Power. He came out of that program. Yeah. So it was well-developed program. And to this day, Coach Bliss and we'll message each other, and very, very positive guy, and just explained what the program was. And they had a program where they would go to this Columbus City schools, and basically they would say, we'll provide a strength coach for your facility, and you in turn pay for some of their stipend. So the school, Columbus Public Schools, paid Ohio State to basically get a strength coach provided by the grad department. So Franklin Heights was the school I was assigned to on the west side. And, 2 weeks in, when I finished my classes, I take the bus across town, because I didn't have a car at the time, take the bus out to the west side and be there when the school day ended, and started, coaching kids. And really at the time, it's funny because, I didn't know a whole lot. I just knew what I knew. And the program was, very traditional. On Mondays we squatted, 10, 8, 6, that 10, 8, 6, 4, Wednesday we benched, and Friday we deadlifted. Then we had some auxiliary stuff. It was very, very, very traditional. But what I discovered, what I learned, what I most remember though, and it's throughout my career, are the people. The people you meet and the experiences you have. So, I just shared the strength coaches I had in college, who were really good men and really caring men. My swim coach in college, who basically, I was cut from the team, but he was gentle and said, I see something, we see more in you. And maybe it's not in competing, which it wasn't. Maybe it's going to be, and got me on my path. And then knocking on doors at Ohio State, and Dr. Mann and Dr. Lamb and Steve Bliss, all these people who made an impact on me just because they cared. They took time. Randy Heyer, hey, come on home. Let's check out Ohio State. I hadn't thought of Ohio State at the time. Mm-hmm. So, and then at the high school, I don't know what I'm doing coaching. I've never had any coaching classes. I was a biology major. So I was a science major who trained and was an athlete, and read a lot. But it was the kids. It was boys and girls, and the culture we created in the winter and in the summertime. I remember going to football games. One of the big things is that the football players, they wanted me to come to games, on Friday nights. And but for me, I didn't have a car, so I'd have to bus out there again. That's from the Columbus to the west side. I think there's at least one transfer if I remember. It's a ride. But I remember just being touched that they wanted me there. Like, Coach, you got to come to our game, and it was really important. And I remember one of the games, they gave me a jacket to wear, Franklin Heights, Falcons, and it was just, those memories were just the connections. And I remember them now, and I felt them then, and maybe that's just my DNA and it's knit into me, that connection or empathy, whatever you want to call it now. but I felt it, the care and the culture. And just those were learning years. I learned a lot. You know, you get plucked down into a high school and the bell rings and I wanted all the athletes to be lifting weights. I wanted them all training. And I guess previously it had been a little bit more biased toward the football players, and some of the other sports didn't, you know, right or wrong. I don't know what it was like, but I remember going to the other sports and they were surprised. Oh, our kids can come too? And yeah. And so we'd have the room would be full, and it was all, you know, homemade equipment. You know, we were in a stadium, and if you know the concrete stadiums, if you can imagine being underneath, if you have a concrete bleacher stadium, if you stand on the stadium side, there's seats, right, that move up in a staircase fashion. Well, if you're underneath it in the concourse, it's an inverted staircase coming down on you. Well, they went in that space and put cinder blocks to close it off. So we had an bumpy asphalt floor, and our ceiling was the underside of the stadium, you know, that at its one end was, you know, 5 feet tall, and, you know, homemade benches, you know, dug into the concrete, you know, cemented into the concrete. Somebody welded them together, and, you know, a step squat rack, and, you know, bars and dumbbells, and we made it work. We had a lot of fun, and trained hard, and even I remember in those days, you know, if an athlete in the summertime with football, if someone, you know, you worked really hard, maybe you got nauseous. Well, if you got sick, the rule was that was okay, but you had to clean it up. So so it was almost like, you know, it was one of those things where the guys, it was almost a badge of courage if I got nauseous, and we get the bucket out, but to have to clean up, like, yeah, which now, you know, certainly I don't recommend that, but at the time that was kind of a bonding. Hey, here's some rules. This is one of the rules. We were going to work hard, but if you work too hard, you got to clean up your
badge
mess.
Of honor there, huh?
Yeah.
Like, hey, did you throw up today?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't?
So,
it's
right.
kind of weak, man.
So, you know, I learned a lot. That was a crucible for learning, and the youth, the kids there, the boys and the girls, young men and women, really were caring and helped me along at a time when I really needed it. You know, not knowing what I'm doing, but Coach Morton, Mr. Morton, they were thrilled that what I brought was care. You know what I mean? And passion. And hopefully they identified that, and they in turn pulled me along and encouraged me. So it was a win-win. So after getting my master's, I was hired at Penn State, and there, you know, you're at Penn State at the time, and with Coach Paterno, and a very successful program. They won the national title the year before, and that's where I learned, you know, what a standard looks like. In other words, in any facility or any team or any organization, is there a standard? And Penn State at the time certainly had a standard of how we were going to carry ourselves, and it was very respectful. It was very professional. You know, Coach Paterno is a legendary man, and he was. My interactions with him were limited, but they were just watching him was impactful. Just being a part of that program, you know, taught me a lot about how to be a professional, how to carry myself. Just in how I dressed, how I acted, how I carried myself. So many lessons in that through those years, and worked my tail off with football and then 14 other sports. So I had a variety of athletes there, again, male and female, and sports, sport applications. And then from there, you know, I did a workshop, and it's about people, right? People are going to keep coming up in this story. Chet Furman was my boss at Penn State, and he'll come back later. He hired me because I had met him at a workshop. Well, by the end of my Penn State career, now I'm presenting at workshops. And at one of the workshops at the University of Kentucky, Ray Oliver was the strength coach at the time, and we later worked together. He's basically one of my dear friends and a brother to me. I spoke at his clinic, and a fellow named John Dunn, who was the strength coach for the Chargers, also spoke there. And he said, hey, if I, and he was a Penn State guy. Turns out he was an offensive captain in 1977. So he loved Penn State. And, you're from Penn State. Oh, that's great. He goes, if I ever have an opportunity, I'm going to hire you. And a year later, his assistant left to go to the Rams, the LA Rams at the time, the first time around. And he called me and said, hey, can you be out here in a week? You got to be out here. You got to be out here in a week, or else I'm going to find somebody else. And I drove out with Tom, a friend of mine, Tom Bragg. We drove cross country and started my NFL time. So, I don't know how much time you want to spend on all this, but I mean, we probably want to get to other stuff. But just San Diego and the Panthers and all the other teams, it's the experiences and the people. So my 30 years of coaching, if anything, I have simplified the programming part. You know what I mean? Mm. I've tried all kinds of systems and I study them, but I've really simplified that. So the X's and O's have their place, and I spent years, and I still do, immersing in those, but what has increased is care for people. Mm. And how can I'm not saying, studying leadership or studying cueing or insights into how to connect, but just a more organic care and other-centered approach to people, and listening and spending time with people and caring for them. So what's grown is my ability to relate to not only athletes, clients, friends, people I meet at the grocery store. So that's over 30 years. A lot of it says things have slowed down on the X's and O's as far as things are moving slower. I know how to, I can coach. I know technique. But what has increased is being able to see when that slows down. At Franklin Heights, I was worried about sets and reps and how to teach, and I still am. But now it's more things, that part. That when you're teaching it, when material slows down. Now I'm seeing more of the landscape and more about people, and that's where the difference is made. So people have been a part of my journey and those relationships and those memories, and it's even more so now. So
what one of the things I'd like you, because we know that probably some people are listening that are younger and probably motivated to get to where you're at. They want to hit the collegiate level or pro level as coaches.
Yeah.
What are some misconceptions that they may have that maybe, because we know how many hours we had a misconception of how much time strength coaches have and things like that, how hectic schedules can be. And
Well, I think that if you really have a passion, I had a passion for training. I didn't start out with the idea that I want to be an NFL strength coach. I loved the training process. Even as an athlete, I spent as much time in myself in the training. I enjoyed that more than the competing. And that's been true. And most of what I studied and spent time with was the process of training. So there's got to be a passion for it and a real love for it. I didn't have a specific long-term goal. I tend to be moment to moment. Like, you know where you want to go. I'd like to make a living doing this, but in 1985, that was not. Now it's very apparent. But back then it wasn't as apparent. Well, what does this look like? I never worried about it. When I spend your time meeting people, getting to know people, whether now the term is, find a mentor. I had some good people that I went to learn from. And back then you went to workshops. Now we're this time right now with what's going on, we're inundated with webinars. But I used to go to workshops. I was single at the time, and I'd drive all over the place just to go to hear people speak. That's how I met Chet Furman from Penn State. I went whenever he came anywhere in the Midwest area near Ohio. When I'd go see him. You know, a gym in Columbus he presented, or workshops or a hammer strength clinic. I'd go wherever he was. And by the third or fourth time, he said, "I'm going to hire you someday." You know, and then when Mother Dunn hired me, I was presenting at a workshop, and we connected. Hey, I'm going to hire you some if I ever get a chance. So all of that professional, that movement comes from, you know, the old term. It's not so much who you know, because that has a negative connotation to it, but it is the people you know and the people you meet, but also what they know about you and what the relationship is. So I would say find the people that resonate with you. Find the coaches like with you guys, Stick Mobility. I go on the internet. It was what, 2014, 15. Yeah. And hey, these guys is pretty cool stuff. And what do we message each other. So I mean, just if you see something that resonates, or a topic, or even if you hear a webinar, then maybe try to connect. The virtual stuff is great, but I think an email or a phone call, hey, can I come visit you? That's what I did. Because you have to be in the job market. I know it now. You have to know, people have to know about you, and they have to have a real connection to you. I'm finding that now. The people that get hired, it's because they have a real connection with people doing the hiring. So, you know, I identify, take it all in, learn all you can, you know, take every opportunity to learn, and make it. Now I would say, back then I was focused on strength and conditioning stuff, and you probably have to dedicate X amount of time to your passion. Now I've expanded. I want to learn in different areas and grow as a total person. Yeah. But I identify who resonates with you, whose message makes sense, and then dive deeper. For me, to this day, Dan John is I'll say he's been a mentor of mine, and he'll say, "Oh no, Chip," but he really has been, because oftentimes for me now, 30 plus years in, there's lots of noise, training noise. It's this, it's that, it's this technique, it's this program, it's this X and O. And then I read, and I'll get in, and I want to learn it all, and it becomes a lot, and then you don't know where to turn, and social media makes it worse because you're bombarded. But then I'll read something by Dan John. It's like, all right, I exhale, I'm like, all right. And he brings me back to just the basics, the simple, and it sounds simple. Some people, that's just, it's simple, blah, blah, blah. They poo-poo it. Not everybody, but some people poo-poo it, not technical. But from where I sit, this many years into it, he is so on point. Because when you're dealing with human beings, and not everybody has the same passion for the X's and O's. The athletes I trained, rarely, there's a few that had passion for training and learning, but most tell me what to do. Yeah. And you had to find a way to explain it and help them understand and help their buy-in. And so Dan, I think I can't speak for him, but what Dan has is years of experience, and he's filtered away the fluff, the noise. He's quieted the noise, and he's down to, this works. I've seen this work. And he always says, this is what I've seen work. And for me, it's just, I don't use everything that he says, but it's just his voice of reason, that term reasonable. Yeah. So find someone that resonates, that you identify with, that you understand, that you think, wow, that really, I like that. And that makes sense to me. And then and pursue it, and pursue the relationship. That would be the start. And as you meet people in this profession, like we met. It started as I saw some of your work. I messaged you, hey, and then you come to the hotel when we're in San Jose. Hey, let's get a little demo, and then we invite you out, and now it's, you guys are dear friends. So But it started with just, wow, I like what they're doing. That's a pretty unique idea. Makes a lot of sense to me. And then you try it, and it's like this is really valuable stuff. And then it connects with everything else you've learned, and that's how you have it in your toolbox. And so you grow relationally with people, professionally, and at the same time you're learning along the way. So you're filling your toolbox of the things you can use. And that will continue to grow and morph and all that. I mean, all the systems, it's good to learn a lot of stuff, but eventually you have to put something down on paper and put it in play. You know what I mean? So, yes. And in my experience, the simple that the true experts can bring things down to really simple terms that a 14-year-old can understand, and a 70-year-old or an elite athlete who really doesn't want to lift that day. You know what I mean? He came in bumped and bruised, and that's not his favorite thing to do. So how do you speak to all those, communicate with all those people? So it's people, it's the relationship and the learning. Both those going to have to go hand in hand.
Yeah, and that's what the simplicity is what we need to start with. Basics, simplicity. We see that in every drill or any skill you're trying to achieve, whether it's playing piano, whether it's playing basketball. It's the basics. You have to understand the foundation first. And I think one of the things we see is everybody wants to advance so quickly that they don't have the patience to establish a really good solid base. And then they don't have the ability to come back and reestablish that base when they need it. They just think that everything's got to keep going forward. Yes. But you have to be able to take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward.
Yes. Right? I think that with I've coached, and I failed to mention last year I volunteered over at a local high school in their strength program. And so I started in high school, and I'm back in high school and everything in between. But you're right. That idea that becoming a master of the basics, it's very obvious for an 8th grader who's never lifted weights. And if you attempt to put them in a higher end program, the results aren't always, you can watch it. It's being able to, and sound programs, but not every programming idea is right for the population. So, and I find really, how would I say, you take advanced programming for a certain segment of the population, and you can adapt it and use it for another population. That happens all the time. But boy, oh boy, the foundation of that success is going to be, have they mastered the basic things? Before I go to a dynamic squat, for instance, can the boy squat? Does he know how to do the movement? And so we're so in love with the X's and O's. We're so in love, and I am too. What's the next thing? What's the latest idea? And this is, this stuff's high tech. It's high science. When you take advanced programming and try to apply it to, the person has to be ready to receive it. I'd rather fundamental movements. And I borrowed the categories from Dan John, but when I look at my mentors taught me the same. Dr. Ken Leisner taught me the same thing. You got to squat. He said you have to squat. You have to deadlift. You have to press. You have to pull and carry heavy things. And Dan John calls it squat, hinge, push, pull, loaded carry. My mentors were telling me that, and that's strength training. Look at the old timers. They hinged the hips under load. They squatted, they pushed, and they pulled, and they carried things, or rotated and twisted. But let's get really good at those things. And the other thing that from my background, I at Penn State, we were a machine-based program. The high intensity training, it's been called, and it started probably at West Point with Dan Riley, but then he brought it to Penn State, and Penn State was one of the top programs that was all in. I mean, if you went in the weight room back in 86, 87, when I was there, it was mostly not the old blue, not cam-driven Nautilus machines, chain-driven.
Yeah.
I wish I had those pieces now, vintage pieces. And we had a free weight area they later added in. But what I learned from my mentors back then was it's really not the tool. There are a lot of, it could be a Nautilus machine at the time, or now a hammer strength machine. It could be a sandbag. It can be a partner resisted exercise, manual resistance, we called it, manual resistance, or a barbell. There are a lot. If you have a source of resistance, okay, that can be increased over time, that can provide an overload and then be increased over time. A stone, I have garden stones in my yard that I really acquired them to lift with them. And I have different sizes. So depending on what I want to do, I can provide overload by, sometimes I'll press this one and I'll go heavier and press this one and move up the chain or do carries. As long as it can be added to over time, it's going to provide a training stimulus. Mm-hmm. So and then it comes down to preference or your facility or what you're at, what your athletes buy into. But I came from a background where it wasn't a tool, it was the movement, or how it was done. So in essence, I'm back to that now. Let's master the movement and then find creative ways to load it. And that's going to be different for different people. I've seen that even with elite athletes. Okay, barbell squat, great exercise. Well, what if I had a DB at the Bengals that had, injured low back, spondy or something, but could not put a bar on his back. And this guy's a top safety, a top level player, a starter. He's one of our starters, one of our 11 on defense. Couldn't put a bar on his back, and it would have been deleterious to him. He would have been locked up the next day. Chip, I can't. And he had hurt it doing the barbell squat early in his career. Mm-hmm. So I'm not judging that, but okay, I'm sorry that happened. So now what do we do? Well, he could do a kettlebell. He could do a goblet squat. We used to do a double kettlebell front squat, Sam. We would still squat him, but just not with a bar on his back. So, and he ended up lengthening, which we did a lot with the Bengals. Guys we'd lengthen their career by, once again, listening to the person. Let me see this individual. Here's the big program. I got to manage all these guys, but now I have this player who's got a specific need, and I just can't plug him into this formula. And he's a player for us. He's important. Okay, he's important to us. But they're all important, right? They're all people. Okay, now how do I make this? How do I train this squat pattern? When he's told me that will irritate my back and I can't do it, and I really would prefer not to. So we just adjusted. Or a leg, using a leg press, whatever. But so it's the modality, master the movement, become a master of that movement and all the things that takes, whether it's the nervous system, training the nervous system, tactile, proprioceptive, vestibular, whether it's mobility, is it, can I get enough dorsiflexion to squat effectively? Whatever it might be, have I done enough patterning? Have I done enough Dumpy squats? You know what I mean? It's just,
Five is
master, master the movement, and then add load creatively, or with whatever you have available. So I always, one of the things I pride myself on, and over the years, because of my mentoring and because of that attitude, I tell people, you can plop me down anywhere you want, or you can, Dan Riley used to say in clinics, give me any equipment you want to give, because he's always fighting. He was always, back then it was machines versus free weights. And it was the holy wars. It really was. Yeah. I was in the eye of that at Penn State, the center of that storm. And he'd always say, give me any equipment you want to give me. You can give me all free weights. and you can take or give me whatever you want, and you take whatever you want, and I'll get my guy stronger. He didn't care about what the modality was. He knew how to teach, how to communicate, and how to motivate. And he was going to get results. So that kind of inside-out approach, or what, I'm not sure the term, but basically I've got this goal in mind. How do I get there? Independent of, let's not follow this template is good and I can use it, but let's be creative. Let's move aside being married to a certain modality or a certain system of training. Because if there was one best way, we would all be doing it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You look at the research. Yes. You look at the research, and you can look at all the. Dr. Matt Ray did a study, and I might misquote it, but what I gathered, all these different styles of periodization, and in the end, they were all effective, and they all. The main thing was the variety that they provided, allowed for gain. So, as long as you have a source of resistance that can provide overload and be progressively increased over time, and you're wise with your dosing, you'll get results. In your unique situation.
Do you think that if someone was just to use only machines for strength training and then just kept their mobility up, you think that would be pretty effective?
It's going to be effective, but for tissue development, let's say, for force production, yeah, we've done it. We've done it. Not that if you're measuring it, I never measured my program. I was on wins and losses or success. Now, I was, as a professional, you are measured on wins and losses, but we've had athletes, we had machine-based programs in a number of places I've been, and we were very, very successful. And when we played a team, and it's an 80s argument, but I'll say it again because it'd be new to the listeners here, new to you guys. I just violated the fourth wall there. When you see two teams play, we used to say, you can't say, well, this team, they do power cleans and this team uses machines. You couldn't see that by watching.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous thing. So can I use, I guess I'd rephrase it and say, can I use machines effectively, even all machines with an individual to get strong? Yes. Now I'm going to round that out with a lot of, now I've learned the things I do to round that out are going to be a lot more substantial than they were back then. Back then, we didn't do a lot of front end stuff, mobility, and that wasn't in the 80s. That wasn't the big thing. But now I spend as much time now on some of the preparatory stuff, the nervous system and movement, getting into positions, as we did on the loading stuff, on the weight room stuff. So for my squat and hinge and push and pull connect machines? Absolutely. Absolutely. And to say you can't, now, can someone say, well, I prefer a barbell? Great. Or I prefer a dumbbell. There are advantages and disadvantages to every tool. Every tool is going to provide advantages and disadvantages, right? Things that are great about it and things that are limiting about it. But that's part of the beauty of it. You can do some things with the sandbag or get some developmental qualities that you can't get with anything else. The stick mobility, there's things you can do with stick mobility that you can't get anywhere else. There's qualities to develop. And there's also crossover. So it's a great time to be a professional because there are so many options out there. And that's part of that's part of the noise we just talked about, though. You have to be able to be aware of it, but then filter it out and come down to the basics and what's important, and also pick your tools. So I like, machine training, it works. It's fine. Barbell training, I love barbell. I'm a big, it's funny, I've been called a kettlebell guy. One of my athletes came from a major college, and when I met him as a rookie, he's like, yeah, my strength coach said, you're a kettlebell guy. And I said, well, I said, I don't know what that means. Is that good or bad? But, I said, yes, I really like kettlebells. I have a set in a full set in my basement that I use all the time. We had them in our facility, but we weren't a kettlebell. We do the basic grinds with them. It was another form of resistance.
Yeah.
Instead of a dumbbell row or a hammer row or a TRX row, it might have been a kettlebell row. So it just added variety. But we all have tools we like, and that's, I think, as much as you can as a professional, and that's where listening to your clients, eventually they're going to move to things. Once you've taught them or exposed them, they're going to move to things that maybe they like or prefer or have a history with or have an opinion on. Or in the case of that defensive back with the low back issue, tools have been eliminated for him. Because of injury and history, things were eliminated. The things he couldn't do and shouldn't do. So he had to be creative. So if you said to that person, if you asked me that question, well, okay, can I get strong with machines? Well, if that weren't true, then that player wouldn't have played the 3 more years that he got with us, because I wouldn't have been able to train him. Mm-hmm. I always wonder, and I wondered it then when I was young, because I've always been in rooms. Now my rooms would have a blending of racks and barbells, plenty of barbells, plenty of racks, but also an area with some machines, dumbbells, maybe some area for body weight work. You saw our facility. Maybe ideally a turf area where you can do some mobility. Mm-hmm. So there'd be a great variety of tools. And I'm concerned when I see a room that it's only racks. Mm-hmm. Because then I wonder, well, week 10, when the guy's got a wrist or an elbow, what are you doing? What's he going to do if he can't grab a barbell? Mm-hmm. And you could do it and it gets done, but I always just as a setup. So I'm taking your question from the reverse. If all I had was one modality, I think that'd be really limiting for me. That'd be a really limiting way to do it, because you're going to have individual part of the connecting with people is, how can I help you? And let's if it's not this tool, let's try this instead. Mm. And oftentimes in the NFL, you had to be able to think I had to be able to think on my feet. A guy walks in and I didn't know, he comes in with a cast, or I haven't seen the training yet, but my elbow's killing me. Well, okay, so bench press is out, but I don't want to lose him. I don't want him walking out. I want to get the training session. So let's adjust. And becoming a master at that as a coach, which is from learning and spending time with people and having an open mind on modalities and ideas on training, but starts with movement. Like you said, start with the basic movements and then blossom out from there, and how to do it with different modalities. I have a joke. I used to have a clinic joke that I would say we squat every day. In my teams, they squat every day. And people, some would, others would laugh and not, what do you mean by that? That squatting pattern is fundamental. It's foundational.
Yes.
Now, is it a 3RM barbell box? No, not every day. But it might be going under a hurdle. It might be a goblet squat to pattern a movement. It might be a barbell back squat or a leg press. It might be the Dunphy squat. I might just want to hit that pattern and keep it amped up. But Dan Gable said if it's important, do it every day. So some of those fundamental movements, and there's the next challenge. Okay, well, if these things are important, if they're important to do every day? And we'd say, I should squat every day. I want to keep that movement. How do I do that? And that's part of the journey.
What's interesting, so like when you say that my players squat every day, right away that the people listening in that room, their first thought went to what? Loaded squats. That's exactly where their brain went to. And that is such an issue, because when you tell people, hey, do this every day, that is the vast majority of coaches. They're like, what do you mean? Externally loaded every day? And you're like, no, it's a movement pattern. Right. Like you have to be able to do it without external load. It's just something you do every day.
Correct. Part of that part of getting good at the basics repetition.
Right.
Repetition. Yes. And I'll take a squat down to the ground. It might be rocking, 4-point rocking on hands and feet. Mm-hmm. If you look at that, take the camera and film someone doing a rocking, head up rocking on hands and feet, and then and videotape it and put it up right.
Yeah. It's squatting.
And you get some good gentle ankle mobility and all that good stuff.
And it opens things up. Neurologically, it fires things up. So there's great value. That was a good point, Dennis. I think, and maybe now it's taken me years to see it, and you're doing it. You have that at a younger age, but it's that open-mindedness to really see. There's a real beauty in movement. Mm-hmm. There's a real beauty in the training process, and it's a curious deep dive into people, relationships, and motivation, and teaching, and understanding, and moving someone from A to B. That's where you want to, that essence, that passion for that is where really, if you have that, and I didn't start with that. My initial passion was I liked lifting weights. My junior high school teacher, here's a little story for you. My junior high school teacher was Mr. America in 1971, Mike Katz. If you've seen Pumping Iron, yes. Yeah. Wonderful man. So I imagine being a 7th, 8th, 9th grade health class, 1976, Michael Whalen Junior High School, the Black Panthers. School's closed now. But imagine walking in 7th grade and he's your teacher. And that was right when they filmed Pumping Iron. They were filming that when I was in his class. In fact, one day the crew came in and they did some filming of him in the classroom. It ended up on the cutting room floor, but I was in that. I would have been in that movie. And some of the scenes I was privy to because he and I became friends. But so my initial passion was stirred from Mike Katz. And I never got beat up, or it wasn't like I got sand kicked in my face, but wow, this guy here, look at this guy. And I want to be like, look at that. But he with that big body, they're a successful bodybuilders, probably aren't nice guys. He was the gentlest man, very caring. And I would say he has a wisdom about him. So here he was, 60-inch chest. He was known for that. Larger than life, Mr. America, and yet he was the humble and caring and nurtured us. So yeah, I want to do this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it was a passion for lifting weights, but man, at some point you got to get, as a professional, you got to get beyond that. You got to get beyond, well, I like, some guys get stuck. Well, I do it because I like deadlifting. Well, I like deadlifting too, and I like kettlebells too, but I don't have that on my program. And you got to be able to put yourself aside, because here's my statement. You can say you got to be, one of the qualities of a good coach would be to be other-centered, because really it's not about you.
Yes.
And a lot of the, there's a lot in our business because of the social media and the titles and all that. I think there's a lot of ego involved. Mm-hmm. You got to move beyond yourself and be able to care about other people more. And so to go back to that machine barbell, I may like barbells, and I may think, that's the only way to get strong, which is, I don't believe it is. But I've got to be able to move beyond. If that guy doesn't use barbell, he's weak, he's soft, he doesn't train hard because he's doing a leg press. No. You got to be able to move beyond that and say, a leg press is at this point in his career or in this day of the week, that's the best choice. Or maybe his lifting isn't his favorite thing. And maybe he doesn't like putting a bar on his back. Or maybe he had a bad story to tell from from college or something else. Is there another way I can load that, externally load that squat pattern that will meet this guy where his needs are and allow him to progress and feel successful at, So I guess it's that beauty of it, of the process and their explanation of movement. And you guys have that. That's part of my draw when I hear you both teach is that just the understanding of movement, and yet put in a language where, you can have movement teachers that are wonderful, but they're way over. I don't get it. Or you lost me. That might be good for some people. It's like the elite lifting coach. Okay, you lost me, or that's not going to work with my athletes. So there's specialized pockets, but to be able to bring it to your people, the people that you're in charge of, or that you're to care for, and put in a language where they can understand it. That's the gift to work on. That's the goal to work on. The ability to teach and communicate can be developed. There's a gifting to it, but wherever you're at, you can, by repetition and by immersing in it, you can get pretty good at it. You know what I mean?
I think what you said a little earlier, what I really liked, was when you were talking about the defensive back and how adjusting the squat gave him an extra longevity to his career. And I think that's a huge aspect that you and I have talked about that is missing, because coaches, players and coaches together aren't thinking about, how do I help prolong this person's career? Because that's really their availability, their ability to actually be on the field is number one.
Yes.
That's the big thing. And I remember as a kid watching Zach Thomas years ago in an interview, and he talked about, I wish I had understood the value of quality of movement at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, and I remember him talking about how he was trying to pass that message on to the younger players on the Dolphins as he got older, and trying to stress to them, look, you're getting beat up. You got to really focus on doing things that are going to help you continue in your career and not actually be detrimental to your career. Yes.
And I think that's probably that's part of the gift of the coaches that mentored me, because we weren't bound, although maybe the time was we were bound to a Nautilus machine. We were defending our position there, but it was really made evident early on that it doesn't matter what tool you're using. It can be a manual resistance upright row with a towel, a partner providing resistance, and it all worked. And it's how you do the movement, how you perform the exercise or the movement, no matter what the external loading. That's what counts most, the movement quality. And that's part of our job as coaches, is to present a progressive and regressive, some progressive and regressive programming ideas with multiple, that'll be true across multiple modalities, so that they can, no matter what the situation, time of year, stage of career, orthopedic, insults or history, we can still perform a squat. And paying attention to all the things that get you to the point where you can perform a squat, all the preparatory work, all the patterning that goes on, the soft tissue, whatever it is you're into, all that, getting them to better movement. So it's a really big, it's not just how much can you back squat or how much can you leg press. There's so much more. So moving away from, that's the problem if you're program driven or X&O driven that way, or married to a system, because there's not a lot of, you can be limited in the wiggle room in that. You know what I mean? Some of those programs aren't written for, other tools or other modalities. So now you got an athlete that can't do, now what do I do? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. oh, I can't, he's got a hand cast on. I used to keep, in the Bengals facility, we kept a number of the old Nautilus isolation machines that didn't require any hand gripping.
Yes.
So they had the pad, like a lateral raise or a 70-degree fly where the pads were in the elbow or a pullover. We kept 5 or 6 of those just for our no hands workouts. Because inevitably in the spring or in the season, we'd have somebody that have a cast on for 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so no problem. You know, instead of a lat row, hammer pullover. Instead of a bench press, Nautilus 10-degree fly. Was it ideal? Ideal is a relative term, but we could train the upper body musculature. Well, and the guy walks out of there, it was great. So the reality of athletic competition and training, for me, training teams was, I'm not bound. I'm going to use it all. Mm-hmm. And over time, I get to know some of the players, what they liked and didn't like. And I'm not compromising anything because I believe that all the tools work. Me just getting, I've had players in my career, Hall of Fame players. One Hall of Fame player, long career, one of the greatest of all time, didn't like lifting weights. Okay? Uh-huh. And in some of his history, didn't do a lot of lifting weights. He run a lot, hills and track workouts. And so when I got there to the team, I'm going to keep it generic, but
of course,
I just said, we have a program in place, and everybody's involved, and everybody's going to train, and here's the times. I respect you, all you've accomplished, and he was in his last year, and I said, but I'm going to ask you. The expectation is you'll train like everybody else. You'll come in on a time, and we'll train. Well, and so he agreed, and his workout was maybe 3 or 4 things, and 2 of them were a pull-up and a body weight dip. But he came in consistently, and he made progress. It was an overhead press, a row, a pull, a dip and a pull-up. Might have been something very limited, and a manual shoulder and neck, just to take care of. Okay, he was defensive back. He was a defensive back. So I individualized it for him, respected him, but also there's a standard here and an accountability here that I need you, and I'm going to ask you to respectfully to be a part of this program, and we'll work and we'll communicate. And I know it's you're this many years in, and you've not done a lot of it in the past, but and he did, and at the end he told me. It was a great moment because he told me, he said, Chip, he said, I've done more training, more weight room, more lifting with you in the past year than I did really the previous, 10 years. So I took that and he smiled when he said it. So I took it as a great compliment, just the ability to communicate and mutually have respect and find for him, it wasn't, we got a back squat, or we got to do this, or it was, here's what we need to do for your position and where you are in your career. Here are your needs. Here's where you are mental. Your desire to do it is very low, and your history is low. But let's keep you going. Mm-hmm. Let the strength training. You need to do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's just it's taking all that stuff and all the interactions, all the knowledge, and all the open-mindedness, and being able then to go to that person and communicate and working it out. So you have a big global team setting, but then you also have individuals. You're dealing with individuals with likes and dislikes and opinions and fears and biases and a history and limitations. And then you have to deal with the expectations of a coaching staff. They may want numbers. So, okay, we can do that. We can get numbers. All that. That's all part of the team sport. That's been a part of my career is communicating on all those levels. So,
I think one of the biggest things that surprised me, especially going out and to the facility in Cincinnati was, and I know Neil talked about it, the difference in the superiority of the professional athlete versus the general population. I mean, just the physical difference, the natural God-given, just that very few of us have.
Yeah, I remember when we were there, Chip, there was a wide receiver. I think he just came off an ACL injury. You know, he was rehabbing and he was running routes, and you know the amount of force that he put in the ground. Like I think we were turned around, and all of a sudden I hear this boom, hear this explosion in the ground. I turn around and see this guy, you know, cutting 90 degrees at full speed. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's insane.
Yes, it's those, you know, in the NFL, those are the elite. They're the best in the world at what they do. And so, you know, you have all these, you know, in youth football through the years, it gets titrated out and sifted. So only the very best. And even, you know, every year there's 90 players in an NFL training camp, and they're going to keep like 53 plus some practice squad guys. So even when they get there and it's a weekly, you know, challenge to stay there, but the physical gifts, and it's the physical, you're right, the forces, the collisions. When you're on an NFL sideline, I never lost that amazement of watching a game and thinking, oh my God. Sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, you know? I mean, and there's a reason why I'm standing here, you know,
our bodies would explode on impact there.
Literally, you wonder. That's like a nightmare of mine that one day I had to suit up and play in a game. I'm like, like one of those, you know, I don't want to do this. But the physical gifting, but it's also for those guys and for any elite in any walk of life, whether it's the neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins, there are other qualities that set them apart. It might be the ability of focus, a singular focus. It might be the ability to deal with adversity. It might be the ability to overcome fear, or to learn, or to reason. I mean, there's all kinds of in the NFL durability. We've had phenomenal athletes, but their bodies weren't durable. And it wasn't a training issue, just their bones and ligaments and tendons, they just weren't built heavy enough to withstand the pounding. And I've seen careers ended that way. So there are so many, to be elite in anything, there are so many qualities. And not the least of which are the mental makeup. So many, but certainly physical is part of that. So, you know, the old ad, you know, one of the knocks on professional strength coaches, well, they don't have to train those guys hard because they're gifted. Yeah, but we have to the job is then managing that and being able to train them to withstand that high. They're all in the NFL. They're all high-level guys. And it's really almost a bigger job to keep that, you know, that engine idling with all the wear and tear and abuse and stress that it takes. There's a real art to that, to coaching, and it goes way beyond at that level. What can a guy squat?
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Or did he use a barbell or a machine? You know, that's not going to matter on Sunday. I keep going back to the modality because I want to go back to your mission statement of the movement. Okay, we want to train the squat. That's a fundamental pattern. Maybe on a Monday, it might not be. I'm programming for a barbell back squat, but today might be a leg press for this guy because that's the best choice for him. And it's still a squat pattern. Different external load, different adaptation, but I can still train the hips and quads and all that I want to do effectively. So yeah, the gifting is amazing, but where there's great gifts, there's much more is expected of the coach. You know what I mean? Where there's great gifting, you know, the old Batman thing, or too much is given, there's much more expected. Was that Batman? Did Batman say that? I don't know. But
Dennis
Well, great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. That's Spider-Man. That's Spider-Man.
Yes. So with great gifting of your athletes, there's great responsibility on the part of the coach. So to answer your question, the physical, amazing. And in my case, amazing men. That's what they were. But all unique and all had needs, and they all had to be communicated with individually, some more than others. But I had to be able to connect, talk this guy off the ledge, just keep this guy from doing too much because he loved, those guys that love it, like the Zach Thomas. Hey, let's add this in your program. This might help you, or can I make a suggestion? Mm-hmm. It's all the responsibility to manage all that. And that comes back to the young professional on your journey to learn, gaining insight, reading books, conversing, learning, communicating, and then applying it. And through repetition, trying things and trying systems and all the various systems out there, give it a go. Oftentimes, with different training systems, I'll try it myself. Like I'll follow it and see what does it feel like? And then you, over time, as your toolbox expands, you keep the good. You keep the things that work, and you see what works, and you add. And you're always adding and maybe deleting away. And that's what Dan John does so beautifully. He adds, but he also, if you add, you're going to delete. And some things change, and some things fall away. Or I didn't know this yet. I have things I learn now in workshops. Wow, I didn't know that. I have to change my thought process on that. Mm-hmm. Because now I have information. I reserve the right to change my programming based on what I learn, and I've learned something new. So that's the beauty of it, right? That's the excitement. That's for what we do. There's where the passion lies. That journey, right?
Yeah, because you should see evolutionary changes in the way you train. If you're training if you record yourself training in year 1 and you're doing the same exact thing in year 10, then there is just showing there's just lack of growth.
Yes.
Because something should have changed. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be very subtle, but there needs to be some type of evolutionary change.
Yes. And have the courage to step into that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes.
Have the courage to step into that.
Yeah.
So you're like, I learned, one set to failure on a machine. That's why I cut my teeth on some of that. But the principles of how to perform a good repetition, a properly performed rep, I hold on to that. And some of the coaching techniques and the one-on-one motivation and all that, I've held on to that. Did I have a room full of Nautilus machines in Cincinnati? No, I didn't. We had, but so you're always growing. Do I train that way now? No, I don't. Is it a useful way to train? Absolutely. Does it work? Yep. Neil asked, can you get strong on machines? Yep. I've done it. I've seen it. I've won championships with it. World championships. So now that's the measure of it, but certainly it's effective. Yes. Yep. It's how you use it, right?
So you had discussed with me the role of the strength and conditioning coach in the continuity of the whole coaching staff.
Yes.
Can you explain to the listeners what you mean by that? How other coaches interact with you in regards to input from the information on the players and things like that?
Yeah, I think when I don't. First of all, I don't want to be the risk of saying that I've when you look at my experience, the risk is, well, he's an old timer. He doesn't it's different now and all that. I've coached. I coached high school kids last year. I'm as relevant as anybody. You know what I mean? I've coached. If you can coach a 14-year-old high school boy, believe me, you can coach anybody. But that said, I entered in the profession at a time where the strength coach was literally the bottom of the totem pole, of the coaching totem pole. Because the early strength coaches, they just got the biggest, strongest guy. In the 80s, who's going to run we need a weight coach. Who are we going to get? Well, let's get the biggest, strongest guy. Or that guy looks like he knows how to lift weights. Let's hire him. That's literally how some of the guys got into it. There's still big guys getting hired today. We know that. But my point being, we were down in the weight room, and the less you were heard from, the better. And that's grown. The importance, the significance of the strength coach has grown to where now you have strength coaches that are associate athletic directors, and they're the number one guy after the head coach. I'd say in both cases, whether it was just in the weight room and the daily interactions, or now where strength coaches are now more front and center, your big responsibility is player life, making player life better, player life. Drawing out the best from your people. So there's the coaching aspect, there's the logistics of scheduling and all that. There's the nutrition part. You might be in charge of it, you might be overseeing it, you might be like I was, putting smoothies in lockers after practice or setting out snacks before practice. There's return to play scenarios where you're coming alongside the medical staff, and at some point the athlete transitions from the medical side to the ATC and therapist to you to get back on the field. For me, there was even the faith side where I had to, I was involved with, organizing on the road, at least facilitating team chapels. We had a chapel leader on the faith side of things that he'd make the arrangements for the speaker. But on the road, I had to go, he didn't travel, so we would have guest speakers. So I'd have to go at the hotel and meet with the speaker and set him up and get him going and present him to the group. And so it's player life. You're involved in all that. So that, and for me, that's grown. In Cincinnati, the good news, the blessing of, we had a smaller staff, so to speak. So more was expected. I had to do more. Plus, I have a healthy dose, or more than a healthy dose of, if I want this done right, I got to do it myself. I struggle with, there's a little bit of that. I'll confess it. But I was involved in everything, and every job every position will have different requirements. Every place I've been, there's been a different role for the strength coach within the staff and within the organization. So in Cincinnati, we did a lot. We did a lot of stuff in all those areas I just talked about. Other places at Carolina, I was, when I started my first head strength coaching job, I was in charge of the weight room and all that programming, and I oversaw the nutrition, the menus and all that. But I was really as much administrative, breaking meetings, taking attendance at meetings. I was with the head coach, kind of setting schedules and enforcing those schedules. So every place I've been, it's been a little bit different. But within the staff, what I've learned, because when you're young and you think you have a lot of answers, and certainly I thought I had, you just don't know, so you think you know. So when you're young, you're probably more beyond confidence, a little bit more like, I'm the guy. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't really work with people for the most part. You'll be, you're either arrogant or you're a jerk or whatever, hard to get along with. And what I've come to appreciate is that the term esprit de corps. Mm-hmm. Esprit de corps is, getting along and complimenting each other and collaborating with each other. So within a staff, for the most part, you're providing the coaches with information on the players, how they're doing, what's their well-being, how are they performing, are there any struggles going on? How are they developing? You're the conduit, you're the voice between the players and the coaching staff. Or the other way, amplifying a message from the staff, from the head, carrying the banner. Here's the message, the head coach, here's the vision. Now I've got to amplify that to all these athletes. Mm-hmm. So it's really, it's a heavy dose of communication. I'd say now a heavy dose of humility and knowing your rightful place and what you can contribute. And then allowing others whose gifts you might be different, allowing them to speak into you and to carry that message on or even implement it. What's the vision for the group? What's the vision for the team? And like now, the next job I get, one of my questions will be sitting with the head coach and, what is your vision for your team? What do you want these players to be? Is it, I want them to be physical, or I want them to be, mentally tough? It might be something, a coach speak term, but what does that coach want? And then how do I set about delivering that? It might be, I think all my athletes should be able to, bench press X amount of weight. That's always been a standard. Okay. And try to educate and get to the bottom of, tell me more about that and why, and are you open to alternatives? Or I had a coach, one of my NFL coaches, he wanted his guys to be in shape. He didn't care about lifting weights. He just wanted to be in shape. And he had a test that he used to do. It was like a 2-mile run, whatever, one of those distance runs. And so we eventually got to the point where I knew he wanted fitness. I knew that was important to him, mm-hmm. Fitness. That's how he was going to measure me on how fit the players were. But within that, he had a running test that he used for years. This was a successful coach. Well, I ended up being able to morph it where it could be done on a treadmill test with a heart rate monitor. So I took his idea, and it was a little longer than it was a 12-minute run, which is longer than I would have liked, but it kind of bridged the gap. But we were able to monitor heart rates and have the trainer there and have this, it was a more sound testing environment than going out in a hot day and running on a track or running around the field in a big test environment. And so we were able to I asked him the question and got his vision, was able to kind of communicate and morph it. So that's being able to listen to people and communicate, and with the staff. I've been around really good coaches. I've been around coaches that had held beliefs on training that I didn't share, that maybe they had from their playing days, because everybody brings their history to the table. We all know, even we all do. We all, yep. what I was exposed to, what I like, what I don't like. So you have to acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. And now, so your athletes and your coaches, they bring opinion and history, but you also bring experience and knowledge, and you're responsible. Now, can we get that together, communicate, where everybody, now we all get better? You know what I mean? You respect and honor that. There might be a yeah, but, or have you considered this? Or begging your pardon, have you thought about this? Which I've used all those things with my head coaches. And you come up with a solution that's amenable to everybody. It's like that athlete, that Hall of Fame DB. I don't lift weights. Well, that was his first thing. I don't lift. I mean, why you, Chip? Leave me alone. I don't lift weights. Yes, you do. with all due respect, we're gonna find. I can't let you. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't give you that favor where now you're doing something that everybody else is doing this, and it's not right to these guys. So can we find a solution? And then you work on that. So that's the esprit de corps, the give and take, where I fit in the organization is being able to communicate and bring you to the table, bring magnificent me to the table, but then also realize, here, let me back up to this. If I were to tell you, would you listen to, if I told you it was a prayer, but it was a thought or a prayer from one of the greatest military geopolitical leaders in the history of man, ancient times, but in the history of man. Notable warrior, husband, not without limitation. Okay, he made mistakes, many of them, but was later called a man after God's own heart. Would you listen to a bit of wisdom from that person? I'm asking, would you?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, that person was King David from the Old Testament, King David. And he said in the Psalms, it was a prayer, and he said, I am uniquely and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. This I know full well. So I've taken that's kind of one of my memory verse or one of my affirmations. That is true about me. Dennis, that's true about you. Neil, that's true about you. Listeners, that's true about you. Dennis, you are uniquely and wonderfully made. Mm-hmm. And so if we start with that in our relationships and certainly in our coaching relationships, if I start with that this athlete, he might be a handful, but boy, he's unique and he's remarkably made. If I keep that in mind, do you think that'll impact how I interact with that person? Of course it will. Of course it will. So I try to start that, I start there. I try to keep that in mind, the back of my mind, because it's true about me, and it's an affirmation, but it's also true about you, and it's true about everybody you meet. So I keep that in the back of my mind, and then my coaching philosophy would move into, and it's also Old Testament, the purposes of a person's heart are deep waters. Okay, Neil, the purposes of your heart, there's deep waters in you. But a coach, let's say, of great insight will draw that out. So you're unique and wonderful, Neil, and you're deep waters. And now if I am being wise, if I'm communicating, if we have built relationship, I'm going to draw that out. I'm going to draw the best out of you. So those are kind of two of my, my anchor or bedrock foundational statements that now influence all my interactions. So if someone comes in, they're having a bad day, they don't want to train, grumpy attitude, whatever, or maybe I'm that way. There's days that I'm that way. But then I got to remember in this moment that person, he's unique, and he's remarkable. There's only one of them in the whole wide world. So let me start there. He's not a pain in the butt. He's unique and he's remarkable. So if you start there on things and then layer on top of that what you learned and all that, the communication and where you fit in the staff and how you motivate and how you interact and how you coach, that really makes it fuller. You know what I mean? It becomes this wonderful and remarkable process. So,
yeah, I think that was great to see off that Last Dance documentary, and I think that's one of the things that set Phil Jackson aside from all the other coaches that you saw, was his ability to understand that about each individual player and not give them special treatment, but he knew how to approach each player specific to that player. Yes. And that's why he's the same knock on him that a lot of people say, well, he had Michael Jordan, he had Kobe Bryant, he had all these players. How could he not win? But once again, it's managing those personalities. Yes. And getting the most out of those people and bringing those individuals together as a team, because a lot of other coaches could not have done what he did with the same players. Correct. Right?
I mean, have you watched that series? Yeah, those guys, they're high end men, like in all ways, and all way different. You're right. So if you're like, I'm going to find this guy and you got to do it this way, or it's my way or the highway. Okay, you're okay. Now you're going to lose a great play. You know what I mean? You're right. Managing people. Mm-hmm. every one of those guys, and that, once again, unique and wonderful. Now, how do I honor that, and how do I approach that person?
Very true.
And I would add on to that in the case, discipline with grace. That's one of the tenets of my son's former high school, discipline with grace, and that stuck with me. Knowing that individual, you have a standard, and knowing that individual though is unique, and what's going on and all that. So yeah, Phil Jackson, that's an amazing study. Watching that, I loved watching because it had the behind the scenes stuff. It had the real, the interactions. I loved that part of it. And it was fun to watch him, man. Because I've coached guys like that. I've seen guys like that. I've been around guys that were a handful. Guys that I've been around some of the best. Michael Jordan is arguably the best in basketball. I've been around some that were arguably the best in football. And they're special. They were special men, are special men. So, and do you handle them a little bit? You got to. Now we got to communicate.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to, or else you're going to lose.
You have to. Yes.
Yeah. And once you've lost them, it's hard to get them back.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So,
well, thank you, Coach. We really appreciate this. Like I said on the phone earlier yesterday, this is going to be the first of having you on quite a bit.
Yeah, we'll have to do like a little Last Dance series here.
Yeah. So.
That'd be funny, right?
And so for the listeners out there, really, I hope you got out of this the depths and the layers of if you're looking to become a strength and conditioning coach, or just a coach in general, the understanding the layers that are involved, and it's not just about the X's and the O's.
Yeah,
there's so much more to that. Most people can learn about the X's and the O's. You give them numbers, you show them empirical data, they go, okay, I get that. But now there's the ability to deliver the X's and O's so that the clients, the athletes, they want to know, they need to feel your genuine authenticity, your care, your passion. Yes. They have to feel that, because everybody can smell a bullshitter. I mean, basically, I mean, we know that. We know when somebody could really give two craps about, you or what you're doing. So you have to be able to bring that genuine care and that passion, because when you have that passion, people are going to jump on board a lot more. Yes. It's, that old adage, it's a people business. It's become more and more apparent to me. There are a lot of systems that'll work, a lot of ways to train to get a result, but it's really the people. And just to echo what you said, people want to know you care. They want to know that you care, and that you'll make them better, or you want what's best for them. And if you can step into that and be, first of all, see it, and step into it, step toward it, and grow together, that's when championships are won. Very true. Phil Jackson did all those uber talented guys, but he brought them together as a group, as a team, by individually caring for each one, giving them what they needed. And the result were 6 championships. Yep. So very true. During this time, there's been a lot of webinars out there, and I've seen a lot of X's and O's, and that's good. There's value in that. But like we talked about the other day, just sometimes it's nice to have a conversation. In this case, to have a conversation that people can listen in on and choose to maybe get a nugget or shake their head and say, yeah, it makes sense, or make them think a little bit, bring it back to the human side of it, right? Thank you for your insights and your wisdom. And I always enjoy talking to you. Well, thanks again, Coach. And then to all the listeners out there, thanks for listening. And until our next podcast, be good to each other. Peace. Yes.